Welcome to our webinar on winning at marketing in the Corona crisis. I'm going to pass over to my able-bodied colleague Ben, who's going to introduce what we're up to, what we'll be talking about, and the slides will change in front of you as Ben talks. Miraculous.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, as Mark said, thanks everyone for joining us today to our webinar. Marcom webinar titled Winning at Marketing in the Corona Crisis. And I see attending today a great many familiar names, so welcome to all and many more new, so welcome everyone. I'm sure we've got a varied audience here, differing scopes of interest, and hopefully we'll try and we'll have something for everyone. So moving on to the overview as it stands now of the presentation today. So roll over or adapt and endure, what's a brand to do? That seems an obvious question, but as we've seen certainly with many brands in our network, businesses are paralyzed into inactivity at the moment because of the current landscape, and understandably so. But part of the presentation today is going to be trying to address perhaps what they could or should be doing at this time to ensure that the grass doesn't grow, as it were. So our objectives really are, firstly, to not be peddling panic. There's enough of that going on. We want to have an engaging conversation with fellow professionals and business leaders and thought leaders in order to ensure that there's a positive interaction and that we can see what some of the prevailing wisdom is coming out of this crisis and what some of the key points of successes are, that people are experiencing. So we're really hoping to engage with you and get your feedback and understand some of your stories as well. Certainly, we want to be able to outline how you can use this time to best effect for your brand. And we want to set you up to enhance the brand and your marketing activity so you can win sales later. So we're talking really about dressing for the future. And some of the outcomes that we're hoping to achieve as well is that you have, and we have, an understanding of what you can do in a positive way, and that this webinar really is an overview. So we're inviting feedback from you to establish what works, what doesn't work, what you want to hear more about, and it will be really a top sheet to a series of webinars upcoming over the next months from us as well. So we'll be able to drill down in some of the topics that we're talking about. We're going to be whipping through this presentation quite quickly, hopefully within 15-20 minutes, because we want to get onto the Q&A, which is the most interesting part for us. And we'll get through it quickly with a fair wind. And really, much of what you'll see in this presentation is partly what we have, in some ways, what you will have come across before as marketers. In some ways, if you've been in workshops with a company like ours, you will have gone through some of these processes as well. But it's really a reminder of what we can and should be doing well at this point in time, as well as bringing back to our thinking on the topic, but also ensuring there's a focus on the strategy and the marketing objectives, which is paramount at this time. So a bit of everything, as I say. We'll get through it quite quickly. We'd like to encourage your feedback. We will have Q&A. Those of you who aren't familiar with Zoom already, there is at the bottom of the screen, you should have a pop-up which shows you a Q&A box where you can input your questions to us. So we encourage you to do have a think about those questions as we go through the presentation, so that we have something to work with during that Q&A. Gil will help us. Gil's with us. He's our resident SEO and social media marketing expert. He's been helping us out a lot at Marcom recently, so we're delighted to have him, and he's going to make sure everything goes smoothly as well. So
yeah, fingers crossed. Good afternoon.
Fingers crossed, yeah. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to my esteemed colleague Mark Baines, who's the resident chartered marketer at Marcom, and he's going to take us through the presentation. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, every office should have a chartered marketer in it. So we're in a time of change, obviously, and sales have been temporarily suspended, and there's no way of getting around that. We can't possibly promote sales at the moment because you're going to have a completely adverse reaction. The reality is, don't worry, no one is promoting sales, or rather no one is getting any sales, so you're not missing out. The only people who are doing well out of it are the food processors, the supermarkets, the delivery companies, and one or two others, but you won't be losing out to your competitors. And it would be a dreadful mistake for you to start trying to push sales now, because you're only going to upset people and annoy people. And actually, what you should be doing is showing solidarity and offering them help, offering sympathy, obviously, but help in particular. There's a culture around at the moment, which I'm sure you're aware of people helping each other, offering to do stuff for free. Not suggesting you should necessarily do stuff for free, but there needs to be some element of giving to people to help them. And what you're essentially doing in this furlough period that we're all in is building your brand's reputation. The idea is that if you're not selling, you're not signing up people to buy your product or your service at some point in the future, what you are nevertheless doing is you're making people aware of your brand, you're making people recognize your brand as a good organization to do business with because they care, you care, and you're prepared to help. And there's a lot to be said for just building your brand in the background quietly while all this lockdown is going on. It won't go on for forever, but woe betide you if you start trying to come on strong and sell to people. So moving on, we now look at how remote working has become the norm. And it's amazing how fragmented it's made everything. There was a time when we all worked from home quite regularly, rather than going into the office, and it all seemed to work. I mean, it just doesn't work in manufacturing, but it all seems to work in the service industries and what's known as the knowledge business. But there's a huge strain on everyone now because there's no one in the office. So we're all doing it remotely, and it makes meeting your colleagues and talking to them difficult. Conversely, it also gives you more time. And this is a chance you have to look at your suppliers and check out what else is out there. You probably didn't have time before, now you do. The number of Google searches has gone up exponentially recently, and people are sitting at home thinking, what am I going to do? I'm going to look at my supplier of this, it might be a service, it might be a product, or I'm going to reevaluate the contract I have with that supplier, because your requirements will be different now. Rather, your clients and your customers' supply requirements will be different. So there was a time when they wanted you, they appointed you to manage their, whatever it was, their legals, their professionalism, their HR. It could have been any one of a number of things. They appointed you because they wanted your attention to their requirements. For instance, you would come in and have a meeting with them every month and talk through exactly what you were doing and what was happening in the marketplace. Well, maybe that's no longer so important, quite apart from the fact they probably don't want to meet with you face to face. Actually, maybe something else is more important now, price, for instance. And what it is that the basis on which you were appointed or the contract was signed to supply your widgets some time ago, that basis has now probably changed or is likely to change in the near future. It's both a good thing and a bad thing. It's obviously a bad thing because it means all your contracts, all your client relationships are under review and therefore threatened. But it's also a good thing because so is everybody else's. So with every door that closes, another door that opens. And okay, they're only closing a chink at the moment, but this is your opportunity to get in there and to really change the way you're communicating with them and engaging with them. So your visibility online is changing, or rather the importance of your visibility online is changing. There was a time when your product was probably your company's most important asset, or the knowledge that you as a knowledge-based company, professional services, whatever, technology, the knowledge that you had was your most important asset. I would argue that probably your website is the most important asset, and your position on the Google results pages is your second most important asset. Because with this kind of remote working that's going on at the moment, that's all they've got. They haven't got anything else. So SEO, search engine optimization, is absolutely vital. There was a time, it's been vital for a long time. We've been arguing this for a while, but never more so than now. The value of coming at the top of Google's results pages for your chosen search terms has never been greater. And really, in this time, every effort should be made to get you up to the top. Because if you're not doing that, what else are you doing? And this is going to pay you dividends for years to come. So just looking at SEO, we're going to sort of go through this quite quickly because we're going to be doing other webinars in the following weeks on these subjects in more detail. But you've got three main pillars. You've got build quality, you've got content, and you've got backlinks. And you get those right and everything else should fall into place. So I'm just going to pass over now to Ben, who's going to talk you through the build side of it. Ben.
Thanks, Mark. If we could see the whole slide, that would be very helpful. Yes, as Mark alluded to, search engine optimization is really important. Now, many of us are going to have here attending are going to have a decent knowledge of search engine optimization, but and I think Gil will agree with me. It's moved very quickly in the last year or so with new algorithms and AI with Google, where they're really giving approval to your brand and company at the furthest reaches of the internet. So we talked about position and results pages, but actually your brand equity has never been higher online, or at least, you know, seeking approval for that brand equity has never been higher. So Google, you know, will scrutinize every source it can in terms of elevating, you know, approving your position and the results. So, but yes, certainly in terms of build quality, you know, speed, we're going to see a huge demand on speed in the coming year or so. That will be highly contested. So people are investing much more now in managed web services and demanding more from their websites and their web builds. And also competitive analysis in respect to that, which I think we'll go back to in a minute. But also, you know, a well-maintained site, clean code, fast and well-maintained, that will also be key. And of course, we're going to go on to content next, which Gil will help us with.
Just before then, I mean, it can't be overemphasized that your platform that you're using, your coding, must be of the best, because anything that gets in the way of Google's bots who are coming in searching for the phrase that's been Googled, typed into the Google search engine, anything that gets in the way of that and slows it down allows somebody else to get above you, because it slows down Google, and therefore you just lose out. So it's really, really important that the build is absolutely first-class quality. So moving on, this is really content, and pass over to Gil at this stage to talk about content.
Hi, so really content in the last year or so became Google's most kind of #1 ranking priority. Content used to be secondary in search engines. People used to just write very basic wording and very basic content on their website, and very quickly they would reach top results. However, in the last year or so especially, Google has published new bots and new algorithms, basically the software that crawls the websites and find your content. And they now need to decide, is this content good enough for the viewers? Is this good enough for the readers? And really Google did a revolutionary kind of software that really analyzed the entire content of your page. So what is your content about? It's not just about a single keyword. So if you repeat one many times, it's not going to be enough. Google can understand, based on a variety of different topics, understand what is your wording about. So you need to think about, when you write your content, as if you were writing to another person, as Google reads the information as if it's a human kind of intelligent being reading your content. So really it needs to be long, it needs to be to the point, it needs to have a lot of information that people would be able to find. In those short posts that you quickly published before may not be the way forward. Google wants long articles, at least 1,000 words plus, and have good quality content. And you do need to think about, when you write new articles or updating your website, your competition. So have a look at the other websites that rank for the same sort of topic, and write a better article than what they did. And if it's better than what your competitors wrote, then Google will most likely understand that and feature you on top results.
I think this sort of relational aspect to Google's scrutiny of content now, the fact that it will dive much deeper and to seek approval for that content, which is why we're going to go on to talk about peer review shortly, and testimony, and how much that is now adding to the importance of SEO. There's obviously a lot of writers are getting good work now, those that have good SEO skills, because of how important it is to compete for those key landing pages.
Absolutely, as well as all the other, your competitors will probably use this time to go over and optimize their own website to try to get over and rank higher than where you currently rank. So if you don't work on your content and try to improve your website speed and backlinking that Ben will speak about in a second, your ranking will probably reduce, whilst your competitors will increase.
And to clarify, that's important as well across organic and sponsored content, isn't it? Because you know, and in terms of speed, you can't just kind of buy your way out of these problems. Google will assess the prominence of your advertising online depending on its optimization as well. That's correct, isn't it?
And I think also it's true to say that a few years ago, it used to be said that if you were writing for search engines, then it wasn't very effective in converting visitors to the site to buy your product or service, because in order to write for a search engine, you had to include certain terms, certain phrases, you had to repeat them continuously, and therefore you almost had this kind of Hobson's choice, where on the one hand, do you work the search engines to get to the very top by making your copy very search engine friendly? On the other hand, do you ensure that visitors, people who do actually get around to visiting the site, then get very good copy that sells or whatever you want to do, engages with people to sell your product or service? And almost there was a sort of mismatch between the two. But for the last few years, that's come together, and Google, apart from anything else, can understand if your copy is not very high quality. It can see that, and it recognizes that you're not going to be converting many visitors to the site, and it will penalize you because of it. So the old days of this Hobson choice are gone. Now it just calls for really good content, really well written. Obviously, you need to include the search terms that you want to score highly on, but in a common sense way that is going to be convincing to visitors. Anyway, we're moving on to backlinks now, and pass over to Ben again.
Yes, I think we've indicated the importance of a high-performance website, one that's well optimized for its content and competes well for the terms that it's after. I think the reason that we're laboring on these things is because also they're the basics that should be done well. They're also key to the strategic conversations that have to happen at the top of a project, at the point at which the investment is being determined. We've seen lots of websites that have either come into our kind of dominion where they're very nice websites, well made, quite fast, half decent content, though we always feel like we can improve on it, but that have been left really, and they languish on page 10 of Google because the second half of the investment is never forthcoming, and that's really what happens in the aftercare and what happens ongoing. Companies are very keen to be able to bring their website into the fold and manage it themselves, and that's important. But however, you know, there's important marketing work that needs to be done, and I think that's why we focused on these basics really, because they're helpful to anyone at any level of marketing, and also it's really important that they're done well and they're done on an ongoing basis. And getting back to backlinks, they haven't gone away. They still remain an important metric of approval from Google's point of view. They're hard won, certainly from sites of authority, and but more than that, you know, the notion of backlinks and the notion of approval from the search engines is gone much wider now. Whereas I think I've alluded to before, Google will assess your position in the rankings based on how well your brand equity is perceived or drawn online across a great many different assets. So, you know, the strategic approach to a powerful web project really is to scrutinize all of that presence and how well that comes back. And now, of course, in B2B world as well, you know, testimonials and referrals and you know, approval in that respect, peer review, as we've stated here, is becoming more and more prevalent. It's been around in e-commerce for some time, you know, star reviews, etc., customer reviews. But now B2B world is caught up, and they've realised how much benefit there is to their own ranking, their own website, their own competitiveness, where they introduce this in. And I think strategically, Mark, you've got some views on you know, the use of testimonial, haven't you, on B2B websites?
Well, yes, I think it's always been the case that where quality is hard to judge, because, for instance, you're a service provider rather than a manufacturer of widgets. If you manufacture widgets, you can easily judge quality. You can look at the widget and decide if it's a good one or a bad one. You can look at the price and a few other things, easy. If you're a lawyer or an accountant or a consultant, or you provide some service that is an intangible, such as HR or cost control or something like that, if it's intangible, how do you know if the people you're talking to, whose website you're reading, if they're any good? You know, we're all good at spinning and giving a good account of ourselves. So how do you know if they are genuinely as good as they say they are? And one way you do that is when you're designing a website, you have lots of quotes from happy clients, preferably some who are highly respected in industry or in your niche. And then people think, oh, well, if so-and-so likes it, then it must be good. I'll go with them. And actually, that's how Google works these backlinks too, because they assess the value of the source of the link back to your website. And if it's valued highly, then it will mark you up very much. And if it's of not much value, I don't know, it might be just a directory or something like that, then frankly, and a machine populated directory at that, then it's not really going to give it much value at all. So the more backlinks you can get from more highly regarded places, the better. So in business to business, that tends to be get an article in the Financial Times, or the business pages of the Telegraph or the Times, or Guardian, because these are highly regarded and much admired organs. If you've got trade publications, same thing, get an article in there and get a backlink and get people using that link to your website. And Google loves it. They will love it. And they'll mark you up accordingly. So well worth doing.
And of course, we've seen social media play a big part in that in the last year, so haven't we?
Yeah. Social media is now more important than ever before, and we'll come back to that again. So moving on, if I can get this working. Doesn't seem to want, there we are. So what does it mean for you? And so we've got a sort of a checklist that's going to come up here. If I can get it to come up, here we are. And Ben will just talk us through this quickly. This is just a resume, if you like, of what we've been saying.
So yeah, just a breakdown really of SEO basics, but taking into account the new changes really to Google's algorithm specifically. Important that we have a review of your website construction. And this is all triggered through strategic decisions and strategic objectives, I should say. But this is key, that you have a high-performing website that's well coded, well maintained, well hosted, fast, and content, keep it up to date, keep it relevant, continue to build on content. I think it's important for every company to have a monthly review of not only how well their content is performing, but where they need to develop some kind of a think tank or research group as to because all of their employees are all users as well, so they can feed back into the requirement for content. Is there an important landing page that needs to be written? Is there an area of business that's emerging locally or otherwise that you need a page for? All of these entry points in the sales funnel need to be represented. Ensure it's good quality and answers the visitor needs, and write it from the visitor's perspective. Many websites are quite introspective. They sort of navel gazing in some respect. They're a reflection of how the company sees themselves, but they don't focus on what they haven't really asked the question, what do people expect to hear from us or want to hear from us? So again, they're quite a strategic objective there. Keep it relevant, identify your key search terms, be sure to answer them, and as we've already established, build those pages. Backlinks.
If I can butt in there.
Yes, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, search terms are so important. You must get familiar with what your search terms are likely to be. And in fact, it's a really good idea to run a search term workshop where all the key people in the company, market-facing people in the company, sit down with us or another, and you literally brainstorm what people are using to search for you. A lot of it comes from the stats anyway, so that'll give you a start. But you'd be amazed at what people are Googling, and with the expectation of your service or product coming up, things that you wouldn't necessarily have expected. And these days, I think it's true to say now we're happier building a website from the search terms up rather than building a site and then thinking to ourselves, okay, how are we going to optimize this? I would almost, and I do this quite regularly, I'm happier starting a new website project with a search term workshop than I am with sitting down with a designer and a web developer to think what we're going to build for our clients.
And I think one more thing, circling back to these times and what Mark said in the beginning about showing empathy and solidarity to your customers or to your contacts. This is a great time to think about your old content and see how you can improve it, but also create new content. Pretty similar to what we're doing now here in Marcom. We're creating a webinar for our customers. We want you guys to learn more and use this time and make this beneficial for you guys. So even if you would charge a small fee for it or provide it for cheap or for free, that would be a great way for you to provide content to your customers. Keep in touch, don't push sales, but also kind of refresh your site and keep your brand in the eyes of your contacts and customers.
Mm. Yeah, indeed. It's all about showing solidarity with people around you and being the good guys, really. So, moving on, again, I will have to get this moving. We've come really to Q&A now. So what we'd like to do is to ask us your questions and we'll do our best to answer them best we can. Gil, what's the best way for people to put their questions to us?
Yeah, so there's two ways. If you want to go live and speak to us live, feel free to click on raise hand on the bottom of your screen. There's a way to raise your hand, and if you were, I will put you live. Otherwise, click on the Q&A section and just type in your question and one of us will be happy to answer. So we're going to give you kind of a few seconds to ask and type in the question. Please do so. Here we go. We've got one question coming up. So I think one thing that people are always asking, especially in a time of crisis like this, and maybe Ben can answer, is what about PPC or advertising in this sort of time?
Yeah, I think we've seen it's a hard decision to make for most companies, and I think they need to be ready for that step. You know, we've seen certain channels emerging that are really accommodate ad spend well, and I think LinkedIn's probably dominated on that front, but mainly because they've been developing as a strong platform across the piece, B2B and B2C. But certainly in our world, B2B, LinkedIn has dominated for the last year or so, and they get some great results for their sponsored advertising. Pay-per-click on Google, again, you've got to be dressed for the game really, because if you know, it's kind of good money after bad if your website and your key landing pages are not prepared for that activity, you're not likely to get the kind of return on investment that you really need. So we'd alluded to it earlier, the emphasis on good content and high performing websites are probably more important in a way for PPC, obviously, because you know you've got to get that return on your investment.
If I can add something, maybe a more strategic thing, is that without PPC, what you're doing is organic. With PPC, you're multiplying. So without PPC or any kind of sponsored links on social media, the only people you're going to reach are your existing followers. Now, they may share some of your content with others, so you will scoop up some new people, and other people will find you because of the hashtags you're using. So you will gather some traction through activity on whether it be LinkedIn, Twitter, or just working on your Google search engine results pages. So there's always some organic growth to be had, but it's limited. It's limited to the amount of activity you can do. PPC, however, is a multiplier. So where you were growing at 5% because of your wonderful activities that we've told you all about, put a sponsored link on LinkedIn and suddenly you've got another 1,000 followers, another 10% of followers, for instance. Put a PPC ad on the Google landing pages that you want to be seen at, on ones with specific search terms, and suddenly you're getting clicks that you weren't getting before because some people are happy to click on them, some people aren't. Google will reward you because they'll see you advertising and recognize that you want to be higher on that search term. So advertising in the various forms, PPC forms, is a very, very useful way of multiplying the size of your audience. Without it, you're really destined to organic growth and destined, therefore, to relatively little growth. Is the best you can do.
Mark, what do you think about spending now on empathy or solidarity content, as we say, spending money on this as if it doesn't bring you direct sales or direct results because you're not trying to sell, but you still want to get your name out there. So is this a good kind of investment?
It is, because I mean, only you, the client, can work out the cost benefit of it. But like I said at the beginning of this webinar, it's about, you can't push sales. What you can do is build your brand. What you can do is you can make people recognize you, and they will remember that. And if you come up with some comments about coronavirus that they feel are sympathetic and helpful and heartwarming in some way, I know it sounds silly, but it's true, then they'll remember that, and that will be rewarded, because you'll then have them as a follower of yours. You'll be engaging with them, they'll be engaging with you. And once people do start buying again, whenever that is, then they're going to be on, or you're going to be on their list, one would hope.
Okay, thanks, Mark. We got one more question. So what strategy do you think marketers should focus on now in these uncertain times? Well,
I think it's clearly, the strategy is to show that you are standing alongside everybody. It's not a sales strategy, it's a brand building strategy. And you build brand, as I've said 3 times now, you build brand through empathy, through people feeling that you're on their side, to people feeling that you're not trying to flog them something, you're trying to ensure that they, that is the prospective customer or client, they're okay, that they're surviving, and that they're healthy and they're looking after themselves. So your strategy is one of solidarity, empathy, help, and in doing that, positioning yourself so that people have a good feeling about your brand. And when it does come to a sort of slightly warmer economy than we have now, they will be looking to replace probably their existing supplier contracts, because like I said, it's very likely that their requirements will have changed, and you are on that list.
All right, and then we've got one more question, Ben. So how long it takes to work on a website? So is this a good time, basically, we're asking, is this a good time to redo your entire website, or should you just keep it as it is and update the basic content of it?
Yeah, well, the honest answer is you shouldn't embark on it unless you're going to do it properly. Now, I think there's a lot of people probably hurting at this point in time because they're playing catch up. You know, they're kind of caught behind the curve somewhat. Either there's been projects that have been on ice for a while, or that, you know, they've been put back or overlooked, and now we're into what turns out to be a very competitive period, and they will be thinking beyond the uncertainty and beyond finding investment for those kind of projects. How can we start to regain a foothold where otherwise, you know, they're seeing their competitors move forward? Of course, there's other companies that will do well in this period for many different reasons. So they will probably seek to take the opportunities that are presented to them. In terms of how long it takes, you know, it's a little bit like how long's a piece of string. You can make a very effective 3-page website that performs extremely well for the strategic terms that you seek to compete for. So, and that can be done fairly quickly, but then, you know, there's a lot of thinking that goes into achieving that result, and so you know, that takes up some of the spend, perhaps some of the effort, let's say, that goes into producing it. You know, they need to be done properly. I think certainly a Marcom, our point of view is that, you know, we can't just take you up to the point of launch and then leave you to it. You know, you need to have that extra impetus behind a website. It's an investment. It's a core part of your brand equity. We mentioned it earlier.
And actually, just to carry on where you left off, when we design and build a new website for a client, very often as it goes live, we say to our clients, well, this is not the end of the project, this is just the beginning now, because actually you've got all this SEO to do. There's no point building a site and nobody finds it. I mean, I'm sure the people who might know you might find it, but no one else will. So it's a beginning, not an end.
Yeah.
But coming back to this thing about if it's a good time to do it, of course, you should have done it 3 weeks ago, 3 months ago, 3 years ago. But if you don't do it, you'll never do it. And this particular crisis is likely to go on at the very least a few weeks, probably a few months, God willing, no longer than that. But, you know, it's going to be, what we're experiencing now is, I won't say going to become the norm, but it's certainly going to exist for quite a while to come. Therefore, the sooner you get going with it, the sooner you'll reap the benefits. But there are things that perhaps you're better not doing. I mean, we've got one client who were involved in rebranding and a new name. And the idea was that it should all happen yesterday, April the 1st. This is a technology company, quite a sort of highbrow market, satellite communications. And our advice to them was, don't change your name now. Wait for this to blow over and then change your name. Because really, I think clients, customers are looking for an element of security. They're looking to people who they know. They are nervous about the future. So if you suddenly start making quite major changes like that, like a name change, then I think, you know, that's a high risk strategy really, and no harm in waiting for a couple of months before you indulge in that. But rebuilding your website and getting a new campaign, SEO campaign going, the sooner you start, the sooner you'll reap the benefits.
I think people should be talking about it, shouldn't they? Or at least talking about what they can do better with what they've got if they aren't in a position to confidently move forward with a bigger project. I think now is the time to consolidate. And I think what we'll see emerge is more community support between professions. And part of our desire with these webinars is to keep the conversation going and get other people's point of view and get a more sort of holistic view of how businesses are responding to problems. I think we can all help each other in that respect.
We've got one more question, and maybe I'll start by answering it, and then you guys can add. So Anna asked, how often should we use social media outlets to reach our clients at this time? And on a normal basis, normal day-to-day basis, I would say at least 2-3 times a week. You want to get your message out there. You want to constantly flood in the web with information about your products, about your activities, about behind the scenes, what happened in your business, successes, awards that you've won. I would say during this crisis, it's been, the web has been over flooded with a lot of content. Is because everybody's just sitting at home, working on their business, thinking what can they do with this spare time. And a lot have been put in webinars like this one, and free courses, and endless amount of posts on social media. So I would say it's hard to know what's the right call. I would say to keep it about the same amount. However, just to be a bit more conscious about which areas or where you're going to publish this content, where is this information going to go. If you have a newsletter of your own customers, that will be probably ideal. So you can directly communicate with your customers via email, rather than hoping that your message will show through very busy social media channels. So, yeah.
And if I
sorry, go on, Mark.
build on that, one thing worth remembering is that social media is not a broadcast channel; it's an engagement channel. So yes, do some kind of social media post each day or each week, whatever is best for your business. The more often, the better, generally. By all means, but it's not just about posting and then forgetting about it, and then maybe the next day going and saying, "Oh, I had 68 likes, therefore, you know, more people have followed me." It's about the engagement that you get with it, really, and anyone can like your post without having even bothered to read it, frankly. What you want is for people to read it and then to reply with a comment, whatever that is, hopefully a good comment or some kind of interesting comment. So you get a conversation going, which other people see as well, and maybe join in. And so for each time that you post something new on your social media, be it LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, look for the comments, encourage the comments, get shares, you know, get people sharing your posts as well. You know, when we're assessing the value of social media for our clients, it's easy peasy to say, oh, we've got your followers up 20% from 5,000 to 6,000. You know, wow, that's great, isn't it? But it doesn't mean anything if they're not people that you want to talk to and people who are particularly interested in you. They're just clicking, oh, let's make friends with him because it'd be nice to add another person to my list. It's all about the engagement. So just posting it is the beginning. Then you've got to be there to reply to comments that people make. And the sooner you reply, the more you can keep the conversation going. If somebody comments and then you don't reply for another 4 hours because you were off doing something else, chances are that person has left the room, and you reply, great, but it doesn't go any further.
I would say, in line with that, as with the engagement, but with the content, it's quality over quantity, isn't it? And so I think it's important not to do something now that you can't carry forward or that you wouldn't do under normal conditions. I think people are seeking out the new norms, and we'll all find it eventually. But I think just strategically, it's worthwhile to you know, ramp up any big changes with your social media, and as Mark said, use it for seeking engagement, and that means delivering good quality content still.
Okay, so
fantastic. Thanks for all the questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll be running a webinar same time next week, and we'll be looking at backlinks in much more detail. So if what we've spoken about today has tickled your interest, and if you're serious about marketing, it should have, then please tune in next week at the same time, 3 o'clock next Thursday. Just a very brief rundown of who we are on the roundel that's in front of you. In the middle, you've got online and offline list of things that we do. Around the outside in the red ring, you'll see the more strategic things we do. So we advise clients on their strategies and their go-to-market, and then we implement it in those central boxes. And that's where we can help you. We have deep specialisms available to you, plenty of resources, and we're able to ensure that A, that you have a strategy that works for you, and B, that that strategy then reaches the market in the optimum way. So let's meet, and you'll see there some ways of contacting us. And you can click on chat as well at the bottom of your screen if you like, and leave a comment. I see a couple of people have left comments already, which is nice. If you'd like to discuss anything that we've covered today in more detail, please do email us or call us, and we'll meet virtually. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. We'll be sending a video out of this presentation as well as the presentation itself on social media. I think we've got an article going out this afternoon as well. So, so do meet us on social media. We're keen to engage with you. Contact us. Gil, there's a right to reply feedback form, I think, as well going out, isn't there, after this?
Yeah, we'll send a follow-up email with all the information.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. See you next time.